Welcome to Directionally Correct, a People Next podcast with Cole and Scott. Today's guest, Josh Epperson, Senior Business Consultant at AWS.
Thanks to our sponsors, Pollinode. Harness the full power of organizational network analysis with Pollinode. With one-click data integrations and built-in relationship-based surveys, Pollinode enables people analytics practitioners to move from data to insights faster. To learn more and see why Pollinode is trusted by some of the most innovative companies in the world today, book a demo at pollinode.com/directionally correct. Do you try to just get everything done? Do you try to push back on people? Do you try to do a shitty job so people won't ask you to do anything else? What's your strategy?
Definitely not the latter. That's just not my nature. In fact, I usually do way more than people ask me to do. Part of it is just experience and realizing what is going on. Like the first few times you deal with it, you're like, I am fucking stressed and I can't deal with this. But having gone through, I don't know, 20 cycles of this sort of peak and valley over my working career, but if not 50, sometimes it's crazy peak, sometimes it's not so much. It's just realizing that it's going to be done eventually, even though it doesn't feel like your work's ever going to end.
Yeah, work never does end, does it?
It's not going to end. It's not
never going to end.
It's not going to end.
How's it going, Josh?
What's up, Josh?
Good.
Josh is like a TV person. He deserves to be on TV.
That's funny. So the word deserve triggers something. I was talking to somebody yesterday and they're like, you deserve a break. Or no, wait, you deserve something. And I was like, I don't think we should talk about what I deserve. Because if I probably deserve maybe not some good stuff.
Isn't that like a Snickers advertisement? It's like, you deserve a break or something.
Take a break.
That is exactly what it is. I mean, I haven't seen that in years. It's probably, I don't know that that's still a thing, but I remember that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you ever been on TV? Have either of you ever had the opportunity to be on TV?
Like real TV?
Well, here, a couple weeks ago.
Only print, Scott. I was a model, but we don't have to bring that up.
I was down by the monorail tracks, I don't know, 5th Street in Seattle. And the monorail goes over, buses and cars go underneath it. And there was a bad wreck. And it turns out a car hit a bus underneath the monorail and it hit a pedestrian and killed him, unfortunately.
Oh my God.
But the TV news were everywhere and hey, do you want to be on TV and just talk about this experience? I wasn't here, I don't know anything. You told me all the facts. I know nothing about this.
You don't want me to talk. I don't want me to talk about this.
I don't want to be a meme, right? I don't want to be the crazy. They're gonna remix my voice and shit.
Yeah.
I want you to be a meme.
Wait, what are you talking about? You make memes all the time.
That's a little known inner office fact. Yeah.
Oh, are you a meme maker? Is that a term, meme maker?
It's something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I have my little tools. Now with ChatGPT 4, you just ask it to make something crazy and it'll do it for you.
Except in December. Don't do that in December. It has to be January to November, and then you'll get it.
We'll get to that. Absolutely.
I'm at AWS. Before I was here, I was an external consultant. I got 3 little boys, and I'm tired. How's that?
Yeah. What's your social security number?
Oh, so funny you should ask, because that got stolen recently.
And are you serious?
That sucked. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, I mean, what? Yeah, I can only be so serious. Life is really short.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I want to know more about the Social Security thing. So what happened? How did you fix it?
I got a call from our bank, and they said that was trying to an individual who was named as me and had my Social Security number wanted information. They have a 2-step verification process, which, you know what? I hate two-step verification until it saves your freaking bacon. And they said, our two-step verification process is to actually call you. So they called me, and I'm like, well, that was not me. So and they caught it. And I'm like, okay, I like you. Thank you for catching it. So that's how it started.
Isn't that like part of the scam process too, to like call you and just like try and fish for information? That's
yeah.
Like,
Well, there's
so many threats.
I don't know. How do they even freaking get your social security number? I mean, I don't know how that happened. So,
well, it's all those big, like, every so often you hear like Target lost 10,000 social security numbers in a data breach,
Right.
that kind of thing.
That's
it's like, well, I
probably
hope I didn't shop at Target. I'm Target. I don't mean this about you.
Like, Target, you're great. You're right on target.
Or they had like a bunch of like employee information that could totally be leaked somehow.
So we don't know how it happened, but I did learn really quick like what you're supposed to do, which I didn't know. But basically,
which is what?
You freeze the three. First thing is you freeze the three major credit bureaus. So you freeze Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. Yeah. So you can put a freeze on them. You do that, and that just means that nobody, even yourself, can draw. And then you put a flag on it, and when anybody does draw, you get a notification, or it inquires about drawing, you get a notification.
Is there an end to this, or do you just like live like this forever?
It's still frozen currently, which was a total pain in the butt because we were going through a home equity line of credit process on our house, and they have to pull your credit. And so it was stupid.
I'm sorry, sir. You have no credit.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah. Well, no, it's actually worse. They're like, noticing that there's a flag on your credit. What's that all about?
Yeah.
Because they don't have information other than it's like locked down.
Say, sorry, kids, no presents this year.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's
someone took Dad's Social Security.
Yeah, exactly. Fortunately, I mean, like, I don't think they haven't been able to do anything with it, but I mean,
I don't even know how you would know. Like, they opened up 5 credit cards. Like, if it's not to your address, you would know.
That's right. And what they do, I mean, I could go down this rabbit hole, but what they do is they do like a $9.95 charge. And then they do that for like 4, 5, 6 times. And then they drop the big one. Like, then they clean you out. And I had a friend who didn't shut it down quick enough. And they opened up 2 new accounts. And this is no joke. Cleaned out his checking and his savings and moved it into a dummy account in his name that he didn't have access to.
That's wild.
It's messed up.
Can you get the money back once it's in a dummy account? Do you even know?
Sounds like moving Earth.
It sounds dummy. I don't believe he got the money back. I think it's an ongoing like fraud claim and investigation, and I can't remember who they bank with, but I think you get some of it back, but you don't actually get the money back. The bank has to pay you because they jacked it up. I don't know exactly.
Right.
Well, now I feel justified in the 100 times a day I look at my bank account stuff. Like, you're not getting these $9.95 charges past me, man.
Yeah, if you weren't like what's the word? Hyper
vigilant.
Yeah, hyper vigilant before, you will be now. And if you were before, well, I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Josh actually lives like kind of not stores near me, but like kind of like the UW campus.
Yeah.
And like I go over there not regular, but regular enough to like make it funny. Like I have this idea to actually stop by Josh's house and you can like sneak a beer in the bush and like freak his wife and family out.
Well, the problem is it wouldn't freak anybody out. It would be like a day of night. So yeah. So I mean, I feel like we've seen it all. Like you see nudity. You see
Because you live near a frat house, right? Or on frat row.
a frat house. There's I don't know 50 of them.
Wow.
Well,
That's a
it's
lot.
frats and sororities. No, don't worry, Cole.
I mean-
they're like 5 blocks to the south. So we're removed.
Okay, there's a little buffer. And wait,
Yes.
it's like I'm not that familiar with Washington, the university. Is it like a party school? I always thought it was like a high academic standing school. Am I wrong about that? Like, or
Well, it's
like,
funny.
is it a bunch of
There's a
craziness?
direct relationship between pressure to perform and need to unwind.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, you're still doing college students, right?
You are.
I mean,
It's
they're
not.
still college kids.
Yeah, it's not San Diego State, but there's plenty of stuff happening.
Yeah, fair
I mean,
enough.
you're talking like AstroTurf, like front yards and stuff
Oh,
over
yeah.
there.
Yeah, well,
It's
watch
absolutely
it. I think we're going to
beautiful.
turf our front yard.
Just go Brady Bunch on it.
It's hard.
I mean-
It's hard for me to do that, but you know what? I think we are. We turfed our side yard. It's a really hard thing for me to wrap my head around mentally. Like, I can't.
Why?
Because like you have to vacuum your grass.
Right?
Like it's a hard mental model for me to get my brain around.
You already had to vacuum your carpet. It's not much of a stretch.
But you're outside.
Outdoor carpet.
I don't really use vacuums outside unless I'm cleaning my car, and we haven't done that for years.
Can you use a blower instead of a vacuum?
Yes, that's a good point. And blowers do work. That is a really good point. The problem is that you blow it into a pile.
Mm-hmm.
So you still have to pick it up. I don't know. It just is weird. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I know
mean,
it's
like,
better.
speaking of weird, like, how do the kids react to like all these college kids? It must be like a freaking zoo.
I mean, they're a zoo. They don't care. They're kind of right on pace. I mean, yeah.
The
See, now,
same
I was thinking-
mentality.
No, they're just. It just seems normal to them. It's amazing what you can normalize with kids, for better or for worse. But
See, and I
They
was
don't know any
thinking from the
better.
way that was getting teed up that this was going to be like that movie Neighbors with like Seth Rogen, and they moved next to a fraternity house, and it would just be chaos ensues. I don't know. Is there anything
the only
like that?
difference, Cole, is that I haven't gone in.
Gone into the fraternity houses?
Yeah, I haven't gone in
Yet.
there in the middle of
Yet.
the party. That's better for everybody.
I don't know. It'd make a good movie.
Dude, like the last time I was in a frat house, I mean, it was just absolute chaos. Like, talk about dirty as can be. Some guys like collecting urine in his closet, like
Yeah, that's gross.
in these
That's
just
gross.
wild shit.
We in college, the house I lived in, bunch of dudes, and nobody wanted to do dishes.
Yeah.
So
Oh God.
our solution when the dishes started growing things in the sink and on the counter, our solution, okay, this is well thought out. This is highly educated people. Our solution was to pick up the dishes and the plates and put them on the back steps.
What? Like to let the rain take care of it, or what's going on, or just get rid
No,
of them?
if you don't see them, it doesn't exist.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's really, there's this store called Goodwill. So it's really convenient and actually very cost effective to just go buy new
new dishes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So no joke, at the end of the year, there was a mound of like silverware and pots and pans just on the back step. Nobody went back there ever.
Just a yard sale.
It's nasty.
It seems like a passive aggressive fight between roommates.
Yeah. It might have just been wholly passive, just not aggressive, just wholly passive.
Yeah. I love how we're hitting the hard hitting issues today.
It's important.
I mean, like, it's all sorts of flashbacks too. I mean, I think we all.
Yeah. How do we start this thing?
I think we are sort of. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, how did you actually start? How did you start in this field, Josh? I've known you for quite a while, but I don't even know how you
How I
worked
started?
worked your way into this role,
This?
into this. Yeah, how did you even wind up here?
Let's see. So I started. Oh, the real answer to that is I had a really dysfunctional family.
Okay, I'm
That's how it
listening.
all started. Um, yeah, no, I mean it started for me. I wanted to help. I'm a helper. I like to help. I like to find things that aren't going as well as they could, and be a part of helping make them go better. So that's how my career started at a very early age, but about 25.
Wait. So you noticed this stuff in your childhood, growing up, your parents or what
Absolutely.
have you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I carried that through. So I came up through school in behavioral sciences. And so studied, psychology, studied theology. I came up through the behavioral sciences, and um, and I started working as a clinical therapist actually uh, about 23, 4 years ago. And I worked with young kids ages 6 to 17 with severe mental health
Oh
issues.
my
So
gosh.
they had been like physically abused, sexually abused, um, emotionally abused. I mean, you name it. They had been through it. So I had a caseload as a clinical therapist and worked with them, um, and did that for 5 years or so. Um, yeah,
That's really remarkable. I worked with autistic kids shortly after college. Did that for about 2.5 years. It's really tough.
yeah, yeah. I had a few autistic clients. I would usually get the kids that weren't necessarily on the spectrum, but they were just major behavioral problems. Um,
Like defiant disorder, that sort of thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And really, so the turning point into the career that I am in now is six. Well, yeah, he was a 6-year-old boy, Patrick, um, who was completely mute from the trauma that he had experienced, and we would do what's called play based therapy. If you're familiar with it, I actually love it.
Hmm.
But you don't have to talk. We use action figures from his play bin, and so every day I worked with him for about 3 months, and every day I would work with him. We would do 50-minute, 55-minute sessions, and we'd start by going to his toy bin and picking out the action figures that we wanted to use for that day. If the weather was nice, we would walk across the street to the park, and we would play in this one tree. And basically, what you do is you play with these figures, and then I try to interpret the narrative of what's going on for this little 6-year-old boy
Yeah.
based on the story that's unfolding with these characters. And he was mute, so he didn't talk for 3 months that I knew him, and it was really like, I had just finished my graduate degree. I just finished 2 graduate degrees, and I thought I knew a lot. And I was like, this is all a joke. Like, none of this is even working. Like, what am I doing? I
Yeah.
would show up every week, and I was like, this is a joke. Like, I have no sort of any sort of feedback signal back. And literally on our last day, um, we were coming back from the park, our last day together, coming back from the park, and we had our action figures, and he reached out to grab my hand because that's what we did when we crossed the street. He's a 6-year-old boy. So we walk back across the street, and we step up onto the curb, and I'm like, this is stupid. I've invested all this time and nothing matters. And literally the only thing he ever said to me, he looked up and he said, thanks. And I was like,
What was that? Yeah.
I was like,
Where's this been?
yeah, I was like, yeah, you're welcome. And he didn't say anything after that. Um, and it's just this swirl of emotion trying to figure out, like, what the heck did I do that mattered? Like, you know, like, whoa, I'm amazing. Like, this all works. This is all great,
Yeah.
And then And then I look up at his front door as we're stepping toward his house, and I open his door and we go inside. And I wish, it's hard to fully capture the picture unless you've been in this type of situation. But we go back into his house and it's a mess. Like, it is an absolute mess. And I'm overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, everything in his system and structure is going to belie the thanks that he just said. And I'm like, okay, I can't just do individual change and transformation. I have to think about the system. I have to intervene at the system level, because it doesn't work with just the individual. And so that was about 23 or so years ago. And that's when I got into large scale change and transformation work.
So how do you make change at a system level?
So there's a great author and great practitioner. His name's Adam Kahane. He's got lots of books. One of the books that I love is called Solving Tough Problems. And one of my favorite quotes, and it's a paraphrase, but essentially what he says is, you can't solve system problems until you see yourself as a part of the problem. And I love that. So I mean,
like even externally, like, I mean, you go into like these orgs that you aren't working in.
Yeah.
You are part of the problem as well.
How do I contribute? How am I contributing that? If I sit down with a team, it's very easy, Scott, to like quickly assume the norms and the patterns of relating that team has ingrained and that is ultimately undermining their success. And so I become a part of their microcosm instead of providing something different for them. And so when I become a part of their microcosm, like, how do I recognize that, name it, acknowledge it, and use it as a way to move forward? But what I was going to say, Cole, to your question is, I'm actually working in a group with Adam Kahane right now, reviewing his a book that is going to be coming out this next year, called System Transformation. And it's the subline is TBD, but it's basically to the effect of everyday habits of systems transformers, and we're trying to lean into that, man. I'd be a moron to answer that question right now that you just asked. It's a really big question, and there's not one answer to it. So,
fair enough. I thought I might learn something today. Now I don't know.
No, I never. When you asked me to come on, I never said you were going to learn anything. You just, I didn't commit to that.
Well, I mean, like, how are you going to change the system of like putting dishes on the back porch? I mean, it gets to the real stuff.
Oh yeah. Well,
everyone got an actual job.
Yeah, I mean, everybody. So that's a great practical thing. I mean, in college, you got these guys in my house who just, the way to get the dishes out of the kitchen was to put them in the back porch. So there was plenty of awareness from everybody what was happening, but there was no buy-in to change it. And there was no desire to change it. So you get stuck in the change curve, right? For this little system that nobody cared. There was an alternative way to solve it. You go to Goodwill and get secondhand dishes, right? So
it is a good metaphor, because like you need to change the incentives. The incentives being like, well, we might want to have a girl over someday.
Yeah. That, surprisingly, that wasn't a problem, because the girls that came over, they didn't see the dishes. As long as you didn't open up that back door, everything was fine.
Well, I want to dig into this a little further, just because I feel like you're not letting on to as much as you actually know about this space. I know two of our previous guests, Alec Levinson and Alexis Fink, have this model of people analytics, that OD and people analytics are two sides to the same coin, and one can't be effective without the other. And so I'm wondering, from your perspective with a background in OD, how do you go about, at least starting to try to make organizational change based on, and I'm assuming you use things like data, but tell me if I'm wrong. But
Yeah.
like, what is your process?
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, you got to work back from some signal. I know a lot of people. Actually, I mean, I had a conversation this morning about designing a solution for a customer, and I had to stop and I said, it kind of feels like we have a solution in search of a problem here, and we need to rethink that. And so, definitely got to work back from signals, either trends externally or signals directly from the customer. And yes, I love data that is there. I think it's easier to lift and use if it's just passive data that's being collected and you can analyze it. But even more than that type of data, I love qualitative data. I really love qualitative data. And the reason I love qualitative data is that it sets the system in motion and prepares the system for change.
It's very admirable work, but some additional admirable work is the confusion matrix. You want to step inside, guys?
Ooh,
Let's do it.
okay.
The confusion matrix.
Okay, so you want to do a little research roulette, Josh?
Yeah, as long as I don't get shot.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
You can't know until it happens.
It's a bit of a leap. Yeah.
So the rules are simple. There's one real study that's published and two fictitious ones brought to you by ChatGPT. Your goal is to identify the real study.
Ooh.
Pretty simple. If you get it right, Cole will send you a personalized social media tile that you can share with your friends and family.
Ooh.
We are approaching the holidays here. And if you pick the wrong one, man, we don't even talk about that. We're not going to talk about that.
There are no consequences. I don't think I've ever picked the correct one since we started doing this.
Okay, here are the three studies. Study 1, the influence on fictional literature on real-life problem solving. This is from Rutgers University in the Journal of Cognitive Literary Studies. Influence of fictional literature on real-life
Cognitive
problem solving.
literary studies. That's an interesting journal. Okay.
Do you know it's real?
There are weird journals out there.
Right.
Let's get real. Let's get real. I got a tangent, but okay, whatever. Study
Power
2.
through.
Yeah, power through it. Okay, I'll just back off for a second. I'll just go for it. There was a study that someone had held up as their model in our program. It's a leadership study. It's like one of these like SEM models that has like all sorts of directions and lines connecting left and right. And like a professor that Cole and I both know was like, how the fuck are you going to use that? Like, what the hell is that? And like someone in the room, I can't remember who said, was the most genius thing ever. It's like, oh, it's the Journal of North Korean Leadership. I was like,
I mean, that, there's probably something to what they were saying.
There's a model out there for everybody.
Absolutely. Leader is fearless leader. That's what we know about this journal. Okay, so one is fictional leadership literature on real life problem solving. Study 2, the effect of plant interaction on workplace stress and productivity. This is from the Green Earth Psychological Research Center.
Yeah, that one's for sure real. I already know that. I know that's real.
International Journal.
That's on black. All right.
I already know that one's real. I already know that one.
You like that one? Just like don't even need number 3.
No, I do need number 3. I think that one's real. I don't think that's necessarily the answer. So yeah. So what's number 3?
Placebo effect of medication costs. Expensive placebos are more effective than cheap placebos. This is from University of Cincinnati in the Neurology Journal.
I love that, by the way. I'm putting my bets on that one.
It's saying what's the third one saying? That it costs more to use expensive placebos?
No. Placebo effect of medication costs. Expensive placebos are more effective than cheap placebos.
Oh, they're more effective.
That seems like textbook
get
like behavioral economics right there.
That makes absolutely no sense. Like, it's a
Oh, it
placebo.
makes all the
It's a
sense, Josh. You just don't
like,
even get it, man.
how do they even test that? Do they say like, ooh, this one costs a lot. This
It's
one
a
did.
designer placebo
You're gonna
versus the
enjoy it.
generic.
So it's in the packaging, you think?
I'm trying to have fun with this, Josh. I sincerely don't care if this is true.
Okay, I'm ready.
It's got a little like gold ribbon on the
I'm-
pill.
Yeah, I'm ready to guess.
Okay, so once again, you have influence of fictional literature on real life problem solving, the effect of plant interaction on workplace stress, and placebo effect of medication cost. What say you, Josh?
I think the third one is not true.
Which one is true though?
Oh, there's only one that's true?
There's
Only one is true.
Oh, yeah,
It's
number
like,
two.
it's like Highlander.
Number two.
Number two, going with the plant story.
Yeah, plant story.
Cole's going hard on the placebo. He's hard in on the placebo. Okay, I will present the actual study. It's the placebo.
Oh, you're so smart.
Placebo effect on medication costs in Parkinson's disease. I think that they essentially just had two conditions. They told people that in one case, the placebo wasn't that expensive, and the other it was. So, and they got better. I guess that's how you do it.
Expensive placebo.
People value things they pay more for. I mean, I feel like that's pretty well known.
So it just makes me think about my work, and I'm like, how can I charge people more and get a better outcome, but do the same work?
Okay, so when I worked for a small assessment development company, like the question was like, how much do you charge folks? And like, can we lower the cost? At some point, your clients don't have skin in the game to, get back data to you or this sort of thing. So the goal is to charge them as much as possible. So not only they think that they're getting a better product, but then they have the desire and motivation to work with you.
Yeah. So interesting. It's like the antithesis of the Amazon flywheel on price.
Mm-hmm.
That's the point. Placebos work, baby. I don't even know what the Amazon flywheel is, so I'm winging it.
I want to know more about these plant interactions.
Yeah, I have definitely seen. If I Googled that, what was the name? What was the name of the research study?
Oh, which one?
The plant one.
Oh, it is made up by Google. ChatGPT rather. The effect of plant interaction on workplace stress and productivity. From the Green Earth Psychological Research Center. ChatGPT is amazing.
It is.
I do recall, like, right when the pandemic was really starting to hit, I'd come to the office and be like 3 months after, the work from home order, go home, and you just see all these like dead plants everywhere.
Oh yeah, so many plant casualties from the
pandemic.
Oh yeah, that is,
and not to mention the office pets. Oh my gosh, who took care of them?
I always wondered about the did someone leave like a tuna salad in their desk drawer?
That
would be rough.
That is nasty.
Yeah.
Well, y'all want to move on to something better, if in fact there is something better?
Sure.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start, Cole? Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do some nerdery. The nerdery. Well, we were kind of talking about this earlier about, does work even get done in December?
Yeah, let's do it. So this is like a really interesting study. So work slows down before the holidays. People are out, et cetera, et cetera. But does it actually impact how LLMs perform? So they're just a function of the data that's put into them. So someone asked ChatGPT, they gave them a prompt and measured the length of the actual responses presented to it. And in one case, they told them that the work was being done in December. And as a control, they said it's being done in May. And they essentially just use a simple t-test to determine that when it's told that it's doing work in December, has shorter responses. And this is reproduced by an independent researcher as well. It's really fascinating stuff.
I love that you can do hard-hitting research with t-tests. This is my favorite part of it.
Can you say more?
Well, it's like when you're learning about statistics, and Scott was, using the example earlier of a huge SEM model to predict everything in leadership, when really some of the most important findings you can find with a simple t-test.
Oh,
And I've always maintained that belief. Not that this is an important finding. I think it's interesting though, and we've talked about it before, how just simple and sometimes even inane prompts to LLMs will make their performance improve or decrease. And like you can just say things like try harder and it'll try harder. It's wild.
yeah. Well, and what's interesting is that yes, and it has very specific things. I think it's looking for, because in other cases you can repeat and repeat and repeat, and it doesn't. I had one where I just wanted it to use like the verbatim quotes, like the whole sentence. Use the whole sentence. I got 30 quotes. Use all 30 quotes, and it summarized them. And I told it use it exactly as it's written. Do not add or delete. And it comes back and it says, "You're right. I'm sorry. I did sum up those quotes." And I said so. And then I started interacting. I'm totally engaged. No worries. It's okay. But try it again. And this time, this is what I'm typing. This time, use it without editing, out cutting. It did it again. And I'm like, then I say back to it, you did it again. Like you summed all, and I am deep in a conversation now with the model. You summed it all up. I want the exact comment. It comes back and said, "You're right. I'm sorry. I did it again. I summed it up again." I did this like 4 times, and it wouldn't ever pull the verbatim quotes. So
it's like a Noyatron.
Yeah.
Finally, I just told it, I was like, "Thanks, but this isn't what I'm looking for." And it said sorry. And
Nobody's ever accused it of being impolite. I'll give it that.
yeah.
It is amazing though that it's taking these little bits of information that we feed into it, our digital breadcrumbs, as it were, and like ingest all this information, and is coming up with different responses based on the time of the year. Though, it's like something you wouldn't absolutely predict, right? You would think it'd be performing the same way across the entire
Well, when
year.
you hit 1 trillion parameters, I think there's lots of things that we don't understand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you do the same thing with like an XG boost, and you're like, "How's it work?" It's like, I don't know.
Idea.
Well,
I don't know.
No idea.
And I think this part can't go understated, but they didn't even just do it in May and then do it again in December. They told it, "Hey, it's May right now," or "Hey, it's December right now," and that's what made the difference.
Which that is really fascinating, because don't you think it would know what the date is? Or does it only know what we tell it?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I guess it's the same as saying like try harder, or like, no, you can do this. Like, I'm sorry, I can't summarize your articles. Like, no, you can.
I don't know about you guys, but it has already completely reframed how I do my work.
In what ways?
Well, it's kind of hard to. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, but specifically in terms of how I think about creating value for customers. And so, qualitative analysis is just one simple example. And there used to be a lot of value in doing that analysis.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that organizing, and that creating mental models and recommendations around those theming. And so I'm totally rethinking what my value prop is with customers. Specifically, if all that work is done, I can actually repurpose. Great. Now that I've got these insights that are right on point, I've got this window of time that I can make them better. I can rethink how we're positioning that material. I've just had to completely reframe how I spend my time.
That's fascinating.
The summarizing quotes and this sort of like quasi NLP work, qualitative work, is I don't know how good it is yet. I haven't played with it enough to, because you don't want to put in like organizational data.
You don't want to put in proprietary data.
Yeah.
So you're walking on thin ice trying to play with it.
I enjoyed that side of the work so much too. Like you go
That's
through
the
the
other
centers of
thing.
energy. Yeah.
Yeah. And you kind of have to be willing to trade the joy factor off of doing that work and find a new lane.
I
I
mean,
have,
it's as
oh, go
go
ahead.
on, go on.
I have been working with some of our research scientists to actually build out the prompts for proprietary um, data coding, essentially, and have been doing some fascinating stuff that organizes the model's thinking around a system, an organization system framework, and actually like doing some fine tuning with the model through a series of prompts, and then getting the model to create an output around those prompts. And it's all proprietary data.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I got a question for you guys, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. If you knew like all the like the qualitative data that you want to analyze is coming from human beings, right? They're having to provide this qualitative data to you. Do you think that if the human beings found out that all their data is just going to get analyzed by a GPT, that there would actually stop providing qualitative data at a high caliber anymore? Like if I knew no human being was ever going to read or act upon what I wrote, I probably just wouldn't provide it anymore, or I would try less hard. What do you think? Do you
Mm.
think that might be a second order effect of this that maybe we haven't considered?
Well, I think you hit 2 points there. Like one is read. That's one thing, but act
Mm-hmm.
upon that's the value proposition for answering surveys or
Mm-hmm.
conducting or
Exactly.
participating in these sort of focus groups, etc.
Yep.
Well, I mean,
I
if
don't.
you remove the act upon, I mean, like that's a massive deterrent.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I think the first part of I think there's an assumption in your question, and the assumption in your question is around Chat GPT. I think we already see what you're describing when um, leaders are in environments where they're strapped and they're at capacity. They just click survey responses to get through the survey. And so we already see some of that. It's like, mm, agree or disagree. And they just want to get through the survey. And Scott, you might have better insight into that than I do, but um, I don't think that's only Chat GPT. I think that is people who are overwhelmed and overloaded and um, just want to get through what was being asked of them.
Yeah, this has been this isn't new by any means. Trying to get quality responses to survey data has been a challenge,
Yeah,
probably since day one, since whatever the first survey created. Uh,
yeah,
it's always been a challenge. There are tools to weed out bad responses or identify them.
yeah,
But like when you actually look at say like engagement data across organizations, it's relatively high for most orgs. So it's like a 4 on a 5 point scale. So like trying to identify variance in that, it becomes a real challenge.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 I mean, the other thing that I think in response to your question, Cole, is that it's all self-report. And the bottom line, we are all poor observers of our own reality.
Oh, absolutely.
And so,
We're unreliable narrators.
I
Of
mean,
a,
to a certain extent, and that's where I think some of the power is in the conversation. Like it's in the back and forth versus the point in time ask. And it's I learn something as I'm asked a question and I
Yeah.
respond to it and I get something back. And it's that iterative back and forth where I actually become more invested and where I actually get more meaningful insight around what it is that we're working with.
Is it also because you're dealing with a human, like make some sort of like human connection with that person?
Exactly. 100%. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, like if we weren't doing anything with all of the data, would people's engagement go down?
I mean, like
Maybe.
maybe you need to nudge them something like that.
Yeah, maybe we could use some nudges to try to enact change in behavior.
That's
Um,
crazy talk.
oh my god, I was trying to elongate
Cole's
that so I
trying
could pull
here.
up the article. Sorry, I'm trying
Hey,
to
do you know that,
multitask.
Josh? They call us the Tech Boys
Yeah, I love it.
because
TB,
Yeah,
TB.
that's exactly what they call us. So we got a paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research and a few different authors called "Do the Effects of Social Nudges Persist?" and Theory and Evidence from 38 Natural Field Experiments. And there's 38 different studies here, so obviously this is pretty robust finding. But just kind of the net of it is the answer is no. No, and that after you put these kind of social nudges into effect and you remove the nudge, things have because the theory states that you would form new habits because of these nudges, and therefore, once you remove the nudge, the habit would persist. And essentially, what they find is no, people go back to their baseline more often than not, and so that I think this calls into question somewhat the efficacy of using nudges as a kind of a behavioral change. Not to mention, there's a lot of shitty ways that nudges are used. Like,
Well, that's the
um,
thing. They're not all created equal, right? So there may be some of that at
yeah,
play. Because I think so. For me, I think I mentioned this to you guys at one point, but for me, the corollary to nudges is stimulus response theory, and I find that fascinating. And I don't think stimulus response theory has been disproved ever, but the notion that certain stimuli trigger certain responses, and that you can remove the stimuli that triggered that response and actually uh, place a different stimuli to get a similar response. And
yes.
and so I wonder about that all the time. Like, what stimulus are we providing leaders to get certain responses, or businesses to get certain responses? And then can we remove that and put something else in the mix? And so that's where my head goes.
It's a really interesting question because, like, say a manager's like just cruising along, and like say his team is, sub performing. We sometimes we miss the signs, etc. And then an external group says like, "Hey, your team's in trouble. Do X." And it's like, "Okay, I will do X."
Yeah.
And then you're cruising along again, and all of a sudden you're no longer even looking for the warning signs. You're just waiting for the nudge to come along,
Yeah.
right?
And I worry about that. I really worry about that in our organizations, because I worry, and I don't know
yeah,
that this is the case. I worry that we're going to strip our organizations and strip our individuals of capability and competence.
Yeah,
And because if like, I don't know, I mean,
critical
like,
thinking.
I think about my kids. Like, what I need most for my kids in the next 5-10 years, I need them to become really good at thinking and
Yeah.
making their own decisions. Like, I could just tell them what to do every time, but you know what? They're going to leave the house, and they're going to, I mean, I hope at some point, and
They're gonna
and
go next door to the frat.
and they're gonna go live their lives, and they can't be calling me, or worse yet, expecting me to call them to tell them what to do in every situation. Like,
Yeah.
that's not the type of muscle that we want to build. That's a dependency that builds dependency, not muscle.
yeah,
It's a really good corollary. Like I guess the opposite would be like a check engine light in your car, right? Like that's like something is wrong. We need to do something about
Yeah.
it. But if you're just like waiting for to be told what to do, like what is the point of a manager at that point?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because check engine light and care about your team and feel very different to me. And so, like, I don't really want to have to be thinking about my engine in my car moment by moment. I don't want to have to be thinking about my bank account and is there fraud
Mm-hmm.
on it moment by moment. Like, I want to get some automated nudges. But if I'm a manager of a team, I actually do want to be thinking about my team regularly. Like, I don't want that to be removed. And so it makes me wonder, like, there's not all situations. This is not a big aha, but not all situations are created equal. And the way we apply nudges or the way we apply stimulus response or whatever it is shouldn't apply in all scenarios.
Yeah, it's like you would want to be able to trigger yourself to do good as a manager, perhaps, right?
Yeah, you would hope so. Versus expect that someone else is doing that on my expense. This is a piece I wrote that's on the screen at a firm that I worked at called Navalent, and it's there, and it's about it's this notion that we can trigger altruistic behavior. And how do you, if that's something you care about, how do you think about that, and how do you do it? And this was an article that I took, a take that I took on it. And I think we can get those stimulus around us to get us to respond in certain ways. Like there is some science to that. And if we're thoughtful, we can trigger that.
I take a social network analysis approach here. Essentially, you can trigger a lot of change by creating embeddedness or essentially triangles around you. So essentially pairing with two other people that are like-minded, and you create this like little reinforcement circle, which is where I first heard about this energy use studies from the Pentland book, where he talks about these 38 studies are based on, where people just going about their neighborhood business and then they receive a letter in the mail that says like, hey, Josh and Cole are using 20% less electricity than you are.
Oh, yeah.
You should do the same. And then their energy consumption starts dropping as well. The interesting thing about this like meta-analysis essentially that Cole brought up is that despite the fact that they come to the conclusion that there's no effect, twice in the article, they state that the people that received the treatment and their consumption went down, when they moved away, their consumption stayed down as well.
Yeah.
So, like, even
What's a
though
mixed
that they,
finding for sure.
Oh, interesting.
yeah, absolutely. So they moved away. They're no longer in that condition, and their energy consumption is still low. And so it's like, wow.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is fully disproved.
Maybe they moved to more temperate climates. Who knows?
That's interesting. I get those same
That'd be a random effect, though. That'd be a random effect.
I was making a joke, Scott.
I know, but you got me thinking.
But he just got pissed, so he's going to double down.
We're not going to control for it because it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Sorry, Josh.
No, I was just saying I get those same energy like printouts and where they compare me to my neighbors. Interestingly, I get those and I'm like, well, that's nice.
New high score.
Woo!
There is no shame. I don't have, it doesn't trigger any shame for me. It doesn't trigger any shame. I'm like, I guess you're a better human being than me. I guess we use more. I mean,
you got the heater going, the blender going, fucking lights going nuts, strobe light going.
So it makes me curious. Why does that work for some people and not for others? And I'm, maybe I'm an outlier, but it's possible. So,
well, do you guys want to know the secret to innovation?
Okay, actually, I do.
Let's talk about that. That's a really interesting question, Josh. About like why do you not care? And there's a lot of research that people in cities have less tight relationships with their neighbors. People like in rural areas form these like very strong bonds, and that tends to be like a stronger trusting situation where you want to do good for them. So maybe it's a urban versus rural sort of difference, but we're talking about bars and innovation.
Boom, dropping bars.
Not the behavioral anchored rating scale, but a different sort. So prior to Prohibition, there were some counties that were dry and some are wet. And this, of course, led to some places that you could drink and some places you couldn't. Of course, when they instituted Prohibition, like everyone went dry. And that essentially eliminated these common meeting places where people would get and gather and talk and this sort of thing. But what the researchers found is that after Prohibition, when counties that were formerly wet went dry, there was an 8 to 18% fewer patents filed in those counties. And the biggest impact was in the first 3 years after the patent, and also had the least impact on people that were less likely to join or go to bars, such as women and minorities, which would like drink at home. So there seems to be like a really good evidence that prohibition stifled creativity and innovation.
Was that your mic drop? You were like,
It was.
Yeah.
I got all this shit written out. So
Well, I wonder, like, because what this reminded me of is prohibition and the pandemic have a lot of similar characteristics.
Yeah,
The factor
absolutely.
that was changed was things like video conferencing,
Yeah.
and so would you see the same effects because of COVID that you would have seen because of prohibition? And I think that we're still kind of determining those answers, but obviously it's going to decrease the social capital of any area where people aren't collaborating. And again, it's not just bars, because it says other places where people hang out too. So you
Yeah.
could, say coffee shops or something like that. And
Third
maybe if they
spaces.
ever put prohibition on coffee, we're all screwed. I don't know.
This was Michael Rena's big issue with prohibition with COVID return to home, and we saw it in the data.
Mhm.
Organizations became more clustered. They stopped branching out across different groups, etc.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. One of the things I'm seeing is that if you think about concentric circles, and you've got like me and my little bubble, then you've got like my next circle of relationships, and then broader circle. What I'm seeing right now is a lot of leaders and teams that are just trying to get that second circle, that second ring tight.
Yeah.
Like, so they're good, but they want to connect with those that are kind of one click removed from them and build that, strengthen that in that ring.
It's easier. It's easier to go to the people you know and develop those really strong bonds than it is to
Break out.
seek out people with diverse opinions and
Yeah.
explore the network. Definitely.
So this year's holiday party, definitely going to be at a bar, get that
Absolutely.
collaboration.
We're gonna invent something.
So
Yeah. But this has been fun, Josh. Thank you so much for being our guest today and telling us a little bit about OD and about a bunch of cool stuff. So yeah, thanks for joining us. Scott, any final words for Josh before we give him the final word?
We're gonna go to the bar tonight, Josh. What's going on?
Right. Yeah. No, unfortunately not. Yeah, more to come. No, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it, and I hope it's valuable for anybody watching.
Absolutely. Well, you've been listening to Directionally Correct, People Analytics podcast with Colin Scott and Josh Epperson. Thanks for joining us, Josh.
Later, guys.
All opinions are our own and do not reflect those of any other organization. You've been listening to Directionally Correct, a People Analytics podcast with Colin Scott.